Keanu Reeves invited his humble employee to a luxurious reception, and she ended up feeling unwell at the place, but he called her and... The glittering lights of Los Angeles sparkled like a sea of stars beneath the expansive windows of Keanu Reeves's Beverly Hills mansion. The air was thick with anticipation as the city's elite gathered for what promised to be the event of the season. Keanu, known for his roles in blockbuster hits and his reputation for kindness, had organized this lavish reception to celebrate his latest cinematic triumph. Among the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits, one figure stood out, not for her extravagance but for her simplicity. Madeline Carter, a young waitress who had spent years working discreetly at Hollywood's most exclusive events, found herself on the other side of the serving tray for the first time. Her presence at the party was the result of an unexpected personal invitation from Keanu himself, a gesture that had left her both thrilled and terrified. As Madeline stepped into the grand foyer, her borrowed dress feeling foreign against her skin, she couldn't help but feel like an imposter in a world she had only ever observed from the shadows. The marble floors gleamed beneath her feet, reflecting the shimmer of crystal chandeliers overhead. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves as she ventured further into the heart of the celebration. Keanu spotted her from across the room, a gentle smile playing on his lips. He had always noticed Madeline during the many events she had worked, her quiet efficiency, her kind eyes, and the shadow of sadness that seemed to follow her. Tonight, he hoped to see her shine. "Madeline," he called out, making his way through the crowd. "I'm so glad you could make it." She turned, her eyes widening as Keanu approached. "Mr. Reeves, I thank you for inviting me. This is all so—" "Please call me Keanu," he interrupted softly, "and I hope you'll enjoy yourself tonight. You deserve to be here just as much as anyone else." As Keanu was called away by a group of producers, Madeline found herself alone once more. She wandered through the party, taking in the opulence that surrounded her. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and the air was filled with the scent of expensive perfumes and gourmet hors d'oeuvre. But as the night wore on, Madeline began to feel the weight of curious glances and whispered conversations. She caught snippets of hushed dialogues. Who is she? What's a girl like that doing here? Must be another one of Keanu's charity cases. Each word felt like a dagger, reminding Madeline of the vast gulf between her world and theirs. She tried to blend in, to smile and nod at the right moments, but the feeling of not belonging grew stronger with each passing minute. Across the room, Scarlett Whitmore, a powerful Hollywood producer, and Keanu's ex-girlfriend, watched the scene unfold with narrowed eyes. Her gaze flickered between Keanu and Madeline, a storm brewing behind her perfect makeup. As the pressure mounted, Madeline felt her chest tighten. The room seemed to spin, the voices around her blending into a cacophony of judgment. She needed air, space, anything to escape the suffocating atmosphere of luxury and scrutiny. Slipping away from the main hall, Madeline found herself on a secluded balcony overlooking the city. The cool night air caressed her flushed cheeks as she gripped the ornate railing, trying to steady her breathing. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, threatening to spill over. "I don't belong here," she whispered to the glittering skyline. "What was I thinking?" "Now who told you that?" A familiar voice came from behind her. Madeline turned to find Keanu standing in the doorway, concern etched across his features. He stepped onto the balcony, closing the distance between them. "Everyone," she replied softly, unable to meet his gaze. "Their looks, their whispers. I can feel it. I'm not one of them, Keanu." Keanu's expression softened as he stood beside her, looking out over the city. "You know, Madeline, I've never been much for fitting in either. All of this," he gestured towards the party inside, "it's just a facade. What matters is who we are beneath it all." He turned to face her, his eyes sincere and warm. "And from what I've seen, you're one of the most genuine people I've ever met in this town." Madeline felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. For a moment, the world beyond the balcony ceased to exist. It was just her and Keanu, two souls finding solace in each other's company. "May I have this dance?" Keanu asked suddenly, extending his hand with a gentle smile. Madeline hesitated, glancing back towards the party. Here? But there's no music. We don't need music, Keanu replied, his eyes twinkling. Just trust me. As Madeline placed her hand in his, Keanu pulled her close, and they began to sway gently under the starlit sky. The distant sounds of the city below became their melody, the cool breeze their orchestra. You belong wherever you choose to be, Madeline, Keanu murmured as they danced. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. For those precious moments, Madeline felt a peace she hadn't known in years. The weight she had been carrying seemed to lift, if only temporarily. She allowed herself to get lost in the dance, in the kindness of Keanu's eyes, in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could find her place in this world. Little did they know their intimate moment had not gone unnoticed. Scarlett Whitmore stood in the shadows of the balcony entrance, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms. The sight of Keanu and Madeline dancing stirred a tempest of jealousy and anger within her. She had not fought her way to the top of Hollywood's hierarchy to be upstaged by a mere waitress. As Scarlett slipped back into the party, her mind was already formulating a plan. She would not let this nobody steal the spotlight or Keanu from her. With a determined stride, she made her way to her assistant, whispering urgent instructions. It was time to dig up everything there was to know about Madeline Carter. Meanwhile, on the balcony, the dance came to a gentle end. Keanu and Madeline stood for a moment, their hands still clasped, neither wanting to break the spell that had fallen over them. "Thank you," Madeline said softly, her eyes shining with unshed tears, this time of gratitude rather than sorrow. Keanu squeezed her hand gently. "No need to thank me. Now, shall we rejoin the party? I promise to stay by your side." As they made their way back inside, Madeline felt a new sense of confidence. With Keanu beside her, the whispers and stares seemed less daunting. They mingled with guests, Keanu introducing her to directors, actors, and producers with genuine warmth. However, their re-entry did not go unnoticed. Scarlett watched from across the room, her eyes never leaving the pair. She sipped her champagne slowly, a predatory smile playing on her lips. Soon, she thought, very soon, she would have what she needed to put this little upstart back in her place. As the night wore on, Madeline found herself actually enjoying the party. She engaged in conversations about art, music, and literature, surprising even herself with her knowledge and insight. Keanu beamed with pride as he watched her come out of her shell, revealing the remarkable woman he had always suspected she was. Just as Madeline was beginning to feel truly comfortable, a hush fell over the crowd. Scarlett Whitmore had taken center stage, tapping a spoon against her crystal flute to gain everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," Scarlett's voice rang, out smooth as silk but with an undercurrent of venom, "I hope you're all enjoying this marvelous evening. Keanu, darling, you've outdone yourself." Keanu nodded politely, but his hand instinctively found Madeline's, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Scarlett's gaze locked onto Madeline, her smile never wavering. "And how wonderful to see new faces among us tonight. It's not often we have such diverse company." The emphasis on diverse sent a ripple through the crowd. Madeline felt her heart begin to race, the earlier confidence evaporating under Scarlett's scrutiny. "In fact," Scarlett continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I believe we have a rising star in our midst. Madeline Carter, would you please join me up here?" All eyes turned to Madeline, who stood frozen in place. Keanu gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, silently asking if she wanted him to intervene. But Madeline, summoning a courage, she didn't. No, she possessed, straightened her shoulders and made her way to the front of the room. As she stood beside Scarlett, Madeline could feel the producer's icy presence, so at odds with her warm smile. Scarlett draped an arm around Madeline's shoulders, the gesture more threatening than friendly. "Madeline here has quite a story," Scarlett announced to the room. "In fact, I think it's a story Hollywood would die to tell. Isn't that right, Madeline?" Madeline's blood ran cold. How could Scarlett know? She had buried her past so deeply, changed her name, started a new life. Yet somehow this woman had unearthed secrets Madeline had fought so hard to keep hidden. I don't know what you mean," Madeline stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Scarlett's grip on her shoulder tightened. "Oh, come now. No need to be modest. Why don't you tell everyone about your real family? About the scandal that drove..." You from your privileged life to this? The room held its collective breath, all eyes on Madeline. She could feel the weight of their stares, the hunger for gossip and drama. In that moment, she wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. Keanu started to move towards them, his face a mask of concern and anger, but Scarlett was quicker. You see, Scarlett addressed the crowd, our dear Madeline isn't just a simple waitress. Oh no, she comes from one of the wealthiest families in New England. Or should I say, she did, before a certain incident involving embezzlement and a very public family feud. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Madeline felt her world tilting, the carefully constructed life she had built crumbling around her. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked desperately at Keanu, silently pleading for help. Keanu surged forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. That's enough, Scarlett. But Scarlett wasn't finished. She released Madeline, stepping back with a triumphant smirk. I just thought everyone should know the truth about our mysterious guest. After all, we're all about authenticity in Hollywood, aren't we? The room erupted into a frenzy of whispers and pointed stares. Madeline stood alone in the center, exposed and vulnerable. The shame and pain she had run from for so long came crashing back, threatening to drown her. As tears began to fall, Madeline did the only thing she could think of. She ran. Pushing. Through the crowd she fled from the mansion, from the judging eyes, from the life she had dared to dream might be possible. Keanu called after her, but his voice was lost in the commotion. He turned to Scarlett, his eyes blazing with a fury few had ever seen in the usually calm actor. How dare you, he growled, his voice low and dangerous. You had no right. Scarlett merely shrugged, raising her champagne flute in a mock toast. All's fair in love and war, darling. You should know that by now. As Keanu rushed after Madeline, the party dissolved into chaos. Guests huddled in groups, gossiping about the dramatic turn of events. Scarlett basked in the attention, certain she had re-established her dominance. But the night was far from over. As Keanu's car peeled out of the driveway in search of Madeline, and Scarlett reveled in her perceived victory, the seeds of a greater conflict had been sown. The true battle, for truth, for redemption, and for love, was only just beginning. Hello, dear viewer. We hope you're enjoying this thrilling story. If you are, please consider subscribing to our channel for more captivating tales like this one. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below and know where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us. Now let's get back to the story and see what happens next. Outside, the Los Angeles night was alive with possibility and danger. Keanu's car sped through the streets, his eyes scanning the sidewalks for any sign of Madeline. His mind raced with questions and regrets. How could he have let this happen? Why hadn't he seen through Scarlett's facade? Meanwhile, Madeline ran until her lungs burned and her feet ached. She found herself in a small park, collapsing onto a bench as sobs racked her body. Everything she had worked for, every step she had taken to rebuild her life, had been shattered in a matter of minutes. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, neither Keanu nor Madeline realized that their lives had been irrevocably changed. The events of this night would set in motion a series of challenges, revelations and choices that would test them both in ways they never imagined. The stage was set for a story of redemption, forgiveness, and the power of true connection in a world built on illusions. But as the sun rose over Los Angeles, the question remained, would Keanu find Madeline? And if he did, could he convince her that not all hope was lost? The rising sun cast a warm glow over the streets of Los Angeles as Keanu Reeves pulled his car to the curb, his eyes scanning the small park across the street. He had been searching for hours, driving through the city's winding roads and bustling neighborhoods, his heart heavy with worry and regret. As he stepped out of the vehicle, he spotted a familiar figure huddled on a bench, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Madeline, he called out softly, approaching her with cautious steps. She looked up, her eyes red and puffy from crying, makeup streaked down her cheeks. For a moment, she considered running again, but the exhaustion of the night's events had sapped her strength. Why did you follow me? She asked, her voice hoarse and barely above a whisper. Keanu sat down beside her, careful to give her space. Because I care about you, Madeline. What happened back there, it wasn't right. You didn't deserve that." Madeline let out a bitter laugh. "Didn't I? Maybe this is exactly what I deserve. I've been living a lie, Keanu. Everything Scarlett said, it's all true." Keanu shook his head, his eyes filled with compassion. "Your past doesn't define you, Madeline. We all have things we're not proud of, mistakes we've made. What matters is who we choose to be now." As the early morning joggers and dog walkers began to fill the park, Madeline and Keanu sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Finally, Madeline spoke, her voice trembling. "I was born Madeline, Astor Fulton. My family, as we were old money, New England aristocracy. I grew up in a world of privilege and expectations, but it was all built on lies and corruption." Keanu listened intently as Madeline recounted her story. She told him about discovering her father's embezzlement scheme, how he had been siphoning money from their family's charitable foundation for years. When she threatened to expose him, her own family turned against her, painting her as unstable and unreliable. "They took everything from me," Madeline continued, her hands clenched in her lap. "My inheritance, my identity, my future. I left with nothing but the clothes on my back and a determination to start over." Keanu reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. "You're incredibly brave, Madeline, to walk away from everything you knew, to build a new life. That takes real strength." She looked at him, a glimmer of hope breaking through her despair. "You don't think less of me, for lying, for hiding who I really am?" "No," Keanu said firmly. "I think I understand you better now, and I admire you even more." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Keanu and Madeline really talked for the first time. He shared his own struggles with fame, the pressure to maintain an image, and the loneliness that often came with his success. In turn, Madeline opened up about her fears, her dreams, and the constant battle to prove her worth in a world that had once rejected her. Hours passed, and the park around them came to life with families and couples enjoying the beautiful day. Keanu and Madeline remained on their bench, lost in conversation, finding solace and understanding in each other's company. "What will you do now?" Keanu asked as their talk finally wound down. Madeline sighed, looking out at the bustling park. "I don't know. My life here, it feels tainted now. Maybe it's time to move on again, start fresh somewhere new." Keanu felt a pang in his chest at the thought of Madeline leaving. "Or maybe," he said carefully, "this is an opportunity to face your past head-on, to show everyone, including yourself, that you're not defined by your family's actions or Scarlett's cruelty." Madeline turned to him, a mix of fear and determination in her eyes. "How? My reputation is in tatters. Who would believe me now?" "I believe in you," Keanu said simply. "And I think, if you're willing to fight, we can make others see the truth too." As they sat there contemplating the future, neither of them noticed the paparazzi hidden in the bushes nearby, his camera capturing every moment of their intimate conversation. The photos would soon be splashed across tabloids and gossip sites, adding fuel to the already raging fire of rumors and speculation. Back at Keanu's mansion, the aftermath of the party was in full swing. Staff members cleaned up the remnants of the lavish celebration, while Scarlett Whitmore held court in the living room, regaling a group of Hollywood insiders with her version of the night's events. "You should have seen her face," Scarlett laughed, sipping her mimosa, like a deer in headlights. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. The group chuckled sycophantically, but one voice cut through the laughter. "Don't you think you went too far, Scarlett? The girl seemed harmless enough." Scarlett's eyes narrowed as she focused on the speaker, a young up-and-coming director named Alex. "Harmless? Oh, honey, no one in this town is harmless, especially not some gold digger trying to sink her claws into Keanu." Alex stood up, shaking his head. "I don't think that's what was happening at all, and even if it was, what gives you the right to destroy someone's life like that?" As Alex walked out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake, Scarlett's perfectly crafted mask slipped for a moment, revealing a flicker of doubt, but she quickly recovered, plastering on her trademark smile. "Well, I guess some people just can't." handle the realities of Hollywood. Meanwhile, across town, Madeline and Keanu had left the park and were walking along the beach, the sound of crashing waves providing a soothing backdrop to their continued conversation. "I have an idea," Keanu said suddenly, stopping to face Madeline. "What if we turn the tables on Scarlett, use her own tactics against her?" Madeline looked at him quizzically. "What do you mean?" "You're not the only one with secrets, Madeline. Scarlett's built her career on manipulating people and burying her own past. If we could expose her true nature, it might not only clear your name, but also put an end to her reign of terror in Hollywood." Madeline hesitated, torn between her desire for justice and her fear of further conflict. "I don't know, Keanu. Going up against someone like Scarlett, it could make things even worse." Keanu took her hands in his eyes intense and sincere. "I know it's scary, but you won't be alone this time. I'll be with you every step of the way. Together, we can set things right." As Madeline looked into Keanu's eyes, she felt a surge of courage. For the first time in years, she wasn't facing her battles alone. She had someone in her corner, someone who believed in her despite knowing her darkest secrets. "Okay," she said softly, squeezing Keanu's hands. "Let's do it. But where do we start?" Keanu grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "I might know. Someone who can help us. An old friend who's an expert at digging up dirt on Hollywood's elite." As they walked back to Keanu's car, hand in hand, neither of them noticed the dark SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing the occupant within. Scarlett Whitmore watched them through binoculars, her jaw clenched in anger. "You want to play games?" she muttered to herself. "Fine, let's play." Over the next few days, Los Angeles became a battleground of whispers and rumors. Tabloids ran, wild with speculation about Keanu and Madeline's relationship, while industry insiders debated the veracity of Scarlett's claims about Madeline's past. Keanu and Madeline, meanwhile, worked tirelessly behind the scenes. They met with Keanu's friends, a former tabloid journalist turned private investigator named Jack Thompson. Jack's office was a cluttered space filled with files and computer screens, a stark contrast to the glossy world of Hollywood. "Scarlett Whitmore, huh?" Jack said, leaning back in his chair. "She's a tough nut to crack, but everyone has skeletons in their closet, especially in this town." As Jack began his investigation, Keanu and Madeline focused on damage control. They reached out to Madeline's former colleagues and employers, gathering statements about her character and work ethic. Keanu used his influence to arrange interviews with respected journalists, giving Madeline a platform to tell her side of the story. But Scarlett wasn't going down without a fight. She launched a smear campaign, planting stories about Madeline's alleged gold-digging ways and hinting at even darker secrets from her past. The pressure was immense, and there were moments when Madeline felt like giving up. One night, after a particularly brutal day of battling public opinion, Madeline broke down in Keanu's arms. "I can't do this anymore," she sobbed. "Maybe I should just disappear. Let everyone forget about me." Keanu held her close, his voice soft but firm. "You can't give up now, Madeline. We're so close to the truth. And more importantly, you can't let them win. You're stronger than that." As Madeline looked up at him, she saw not just compassion in his eyes, but something deeper. In that moment, she realized that what had started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something much more profound. She was falling in love with Keanu Reeves, and the thought both thrilled and terrified her. Keanu, too, was grappling with his growing feelings for Madeline. He had always been guarded with his heart, wary of those who might love him for his fame or fortune. But Madeline was different. She saw him for who he truly was, beyond the Hollywood facade. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the world around them seemed to fade away. Slowly, almost hesitantly, Keanu leaned in, his lips meeting. Madeline's in a soft, tender kiss. It was a moment of pure connection, a beacon of light in the storm they were weathering together. But their moment of peace was short-lived. The next morning, they woke to find their kiss splashed across the front page of every tabloid in the city. The headlines screamed of scandal and secret romance, turning their private moment into public spectacle. Scarlett Whitmore, seeing the photos, flew into a rage. She stormed into her producer's office, demanding that Keanu be removed from their upcoming project together. "It's him or me," she declared, her eyes flashing with fury. The producer, a veteran of Hollywood politics, tried to calm her down. "Scarlett, be reasonable. Keanu's a big draw. We can't just—" "I don't care," Scarlett screamed, slamming her hands on his desk. "I want that little tramp and her boy toy destroyed. If you won't do it, I'll find someone who will." As Scarlett stormed out, the producer sighed heavily. He picked up his phone, dialing a familiar number. "We've got a problem," he said when the other person answered. "Scarlett's out of control. It's time to initiate Plan B." Across town, Jack Thompson was burning the midnight oil, poring over documents and following digital breadcrumbs. Suddenly, his eyes widened as he stumbled upon an encrypted file buried deep in a private server. "Holy shit," he whispered, quickly dialing Keanu's number. "You're not going to believe what I found." As the sun rose over Los Angeles, the stage was set for a showdown that would shake the very foundations of Hollywood. Keanu and Madeline, armed with the truth and their growing love, prepared to face their greatest challenge yet. Scarlett, backed into a corner, was more dangerous than ever. The question remained, in a town built on illusions and lies, could the truth really set them free? The Los Angeles sun beat down mercilessly as Keanu Reeves and Madeline Carter hurried into Jack Thompson's cramped office. The private investigator's face was a mix of excitement and apprehension as he ushered them inside. "What you're about to see," Jack said, his voice low and serious, "could change everything, but I need to warn you, it's not pretty." Keanu and Madeline exchanged glances, their hands instinctively finding each other's. "We're ready," Keanu said, firmly. "Show us what you've found." Jack turned his computer screen towards them, revealing a series of documents, emails, and financial records. "Scarlett Whitmore isn't just a mean girl with a vendetta," he explained. "She's the mastermind behind one of the biggest exploitation rings in Hollywood." As Jack walked them through his findings, Madeline and Keanu's expressions shifted from shock to horror. The documents revealed a complex web of blackmail, coercion, and manipulation. Scarlett had been using her position of power to exploit young, vulnerable actors and actresses, forcing them into compromising situations and then using the evidence to control their careers. "She's ruined lives," Madeline whispered, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. "All those people—" Keanu's jaw clenched, his eyes hard with determination. "We need to stop her. Not just for us, but for everyone she's hurt." Jack nodded, grimly. "That's not all. Remember that charity foundation your family ran, Madeline? The one your father was embezzling from?" Madeline tensed, painful memories flooding back. "What about it?" "Turns out Scarlett was involved in that too. She was helping your father launder the money through various Hollywood productions. When you threatened to expose the scheme, she was the one who convinced your family to turn against you." The revelation hit Madeline like a physical blow. All these years, she had carried the weight of her family's betrayal, never knowing the full extent of the deception. Tears welled in her eyes as the pieces of her past finally fell into place. Keanu wrapped an arm around her, his voice soft but firm. "This ends now. We're going to expose Scarlett for who she really is." But as they formulated their plan, little did they know that Scarlett was making moves of her own. In a luxurious office overlooking the Hollywood Hills, she sat across from Maxwell Stone, one of the most powerful studio executives in the industry. "I want them destroyed," Scarlett hissed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the armrests of her chair. "Use whatever means necessary. I don't care about the cost." Maxwell leaned back, a calculating look in his eyes. "Are you sure about this, Scarlett? Going after Keanu Reeves? It's risky. He's beloved by fans worldwide." Scarlett's laugh was cold and bitter. "Beloved, please, I made him what he is today, and I can unmake him just as easily." As Scarlett left the office, Maxwell picked up his phone, setting in motion a series of events that would rock Hollywood to its core. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Keanu and Madeline, working closely with Jack, began reaching out to Scarlett's victims, gathering testimonies and evidence. Many were hesitant at first, fear of retaliation keeping them silent. But as word spread of Keanu's involvement and the promise of finally bringing Scarlett to justice, more and more came forward. Meanwhile, Scarlett's smear campaign kicked into high gear. Tabloids were flooded with salacious stories about Keanu and Madeline, painting their relationship as a tawdry affair. Old rumors about Keanu's past were dredged up and embellished, while Madeline was portrayed as a gold-digging social climber. The pressure was immense. Keanu found himself being hounded by paparazzi at every turn, while Madeline received threatening phone calls in the middle of the night. But through it all, they clung to each other and the truth they were fighting to reveal. As the days turned into weeks, the battle lines were drawn. Hollywood found itself divided, with some rallying behind Keanu and Madeline, while others sided with Scarlett, either out of fear or self-interest. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Keanu and Madeline were leaving a meeting with their lawyer when they were ambushed by a group of reporters. As cameras flashed and questions were shouted, Madeline suddenly felt lightheaded. The stress of the past weeks, combined with the constant harassment, finally took its toll. As she swayed on her feet, Keanu's arm shot out to steady her. In that moment, caught off guard and genuinely concerned, their masks slipped. The look that passed between them was one of pure love and devotion, captured in perfect clarity by the surrounding cameras. The photo went viral within hours. Across social media platforms and entertainment news shows, the image of Keanu tenderly supporting Madeline became a symbol of their relationship. Public opinion began to shift, with many questioning the narrative Scarlett had been pushing. Sensing the changing tide, Scarlett became desperate. She called an emergency meeting with her inner circle, demanding more aggressive action. "I want something big," she snarled, "something that will bury them once and for all." But her erratic behavior and increasing paranoia were starting to wear thin on her allies. One by one, they began to distance themselves, sensing that Scarlett's downfall was imminent. As Scarlett's world began to crumble, Keanu and Madeline prepared for their final move. With the help of a sympathetic journalist, they arranged for a primetime television interview to tell their story and reveal the truth about Scarlett's activities. The night of the interview, millions tuned in to watch. Madeline, looking elegant but nervous, sat beside Keanu, who exuded calm strength. As the cameras rolled, they began to share their story, not just of the recent events, but of their individual journeys that had led them to this moment. Madeline spoke of her privileged upbringing and the moral crisis that had led her to turn against her family. Keanu shared his own struggles with fame and the loneliness that often accompanied it. Together, they painted a picture of two people who had found in each other not just love, but understanding and acceptance. Then, with a deep breath, they turned to the allegations against Scarlett. Calmly and methodically, they presented the evidence Jack had uncovered, corroborated by testimonies from Scarlett's victims. The scope of her manipulation and exploitation was laid bare for all to see. As the interview progressed, social media exploded with reactions. The "Justice for Madeline" and "Keanu Speaks Truth" began trending worldwide. In living rooms and bars across the country, people watched in stunned silence as the true face of Hollywood's power dynamics was revealed. Scarlett, watching the interview from her mansion, flew into a rage. She grabbed her phone, furiously texting her lawyer, her publicist, anyone who might be able to spin this in her favor. But as the minutes ticked by, she was met with a deafening silence. Her once loyal allies were abandoning ship, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. As the interview drew to a close, the journalist asked Keanu and Madeline about their plans for the future. Keanu turned to Madeline, a soft smile on his face. "Whatever happens," he said, taking her hand, "we'll face it together." The sincerity in his voice, the love evident in their eyes, touched viewers around the world. In that moment, Keanu and Madeline weren't just exposing a Hollywood scandal, they were offering a glimpse of genuine connection in an industry often criticized for its superficiality. The aftermath of the interview was swift and far-reaching. Within days, multiple investigations were launched into Scarlett's activities. Former victims, emboldened by Keanu and Madeline's bravery, came forward in droves. The Hollywood power structure that had enabled Scarlett's behavior for so long began to crumble. Scarlett herself seemed to vanish overnight. Rumors swirled about her whereabouts. Some said she had fled the country, others that she was in hiding, preparing for a legal battle. But for Keanu and Madeline, Scarlett's fate was no longer their primary concern. In the weeks that followed, they focused on healing, both individually and as a couple. Madeline, with Keanu's support, began the process of reconnecting with her estranged family. It was a slow, often painful journey, but one that brought her a sense of closure she had long been seeking. Keanu, for his part, found himself re-evaluating his place in Hollywood. The experience had opened his eyes to the darker aspects of the industry, but it had also shown him the power of using his platform for good. He began to take a more active role in advocating for industry reform, lending his voice to calls for greater transparency and accountability. As for their relationship, Keanu and Madeline found that the crucible of public scrutiny had only strengthened their bond. Away from the cameras and the tabloid headlines, they discovered a deep, abiding love, one based on mutual respect, shared values, and a profound understanding of each other's struggles. One evening, about 6 months after the interview that had changed everything, Keanu and Madeline stood on the balcony of his home, looking out over the Los Angeles skyline. The city glittered below them, beautiful and treacherous as ever. "Do you ever regret it?" Madeline asked softly. "Getting involved in all of this?" Keanu turned to her, his eyes filled with warmth. "Not for a second," he replied. "It brought me you." As they leaned in to share a kiss, both Keanu and Madeline knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. In a city built on dreams and illusions, they had found something real, a love that could withstand the harshest spotlight and the darkest shadows of Hollywood. The story of Keanu Reeves and Madeline Carter would be told for years to come, not just as a tale of scandal and redemption, but as a testament to the power of truth, courage, and love in the face of adversity. In an industry often criticized for its lack of authenticity, they had shown that sometimes reality can be more compelling than any script. As the sun set over Los Angeles, casting a golden glow across the city, Keanu and Madeline stood hand in hand, ready to write the next chapter of their story together.